Hi everyone, welcome to our first edition of Mid-Atlantic Garden Hack. My name's Joel and I'll be your host. You know, it's hard to believe that it's the middle of January here in Maryland and it's 68 degrees. What a great day to start thinking about some ideas for the upcoming spring. One of the first beds that I worked on last spring was this bed right here. You know, it's not a very large area, maybe it's about 30 feet long and about 8 to 10 feet wide. But you can really grow a lot of material here. One of the things that we did is we planted corn and we planted peanuts together in this piece of property. And my plan is to do the same thing this year. Once we get to the time of year we can do that, we're going to go ahead and show you some of the results that we get. One of the things that I really try hard to do is take as much organic material as I have available and use it to mulch in the beds. And so here's our composting bin. Basically we add whatever we can, orange peels. Sometimes we add a little bit of ash from the fireplace, obviously leaves and pine straw, lots and lots of organic material from the kitchen. No meat products, just plant fruit products. Last year we planted this apple tree. We've gone through one full cycle and I'm hoping to get some really good buds. Check out some of these buds here. We also tried to fortify our land a little bit by putting in some mulch, and I'm also adding some wood ash from the fireplace. Really excited about our blueberries this year. We planted these last year and we moved into the house and they're just starting to get established. You can see this row here. One of the things that we did to try to improve our blueberry yield is we covered this so that the birds couldn't get to it. We also put a lot of mulch from the woods and various leaves that we've gotten. Check out some of these buds right here. This is one of the first beds that we planted last year. My plan is to plant it again with lettuce like last year. One of the reasons I like this bed is because as we get into the summer and it starts getting a little bit hotter, there's a little bit of shade during the hottest part of the day. As we get some progress in this bed, I'm going to go ahead and show you what's coming on. This is one of the most interesting things that I've started to try to plant here in Maryland, and that's kiwi. If you look at this plant, it's grown quite a bit. The idea with planting kiwi is that you have to have both a pollinator. You have to have cross-pollination between plants. So we have two different varieties. One is a self-pollinator, and this plant right here needs a pollinator. As you can see, this plant started out as really just a small stick last spring, and now it's grown quite a bit. As we get into the spring and we start getting buds, I'm going to show you the progress. One of the things that I did with the kiwi here is I built a trellis so that it could grow on it. And basically this trellis is just some scrap lumber 2x4s, holes drilled in it here, you can see, and then we just pulled these strings. As the plants mature, they'll begin to grow on the strings and eventually they'll be self-supporting. This is a bed that we used for sweet potatoes last year. We've been adding a lot of compost and mulch to it to try to really make this soil rich. It breathes really well, so I'm looking forward to planting this bed this year. Last year we introduced several dry root strawberries to this bed right here. In fact, I think we put in about 15 or 20 plants total that actually survived from the planting stage. Look at how many plants are here. My plan this year is to thin out this group, leaving the strongest plants and then transplanting the smaller plants to a new bed so that we can establish a new bed. This should produce really well this year. Later in the spring, I'll show you the results we're getting. Last year we planted a couple of different grape varieties and we're going to see how these do this year. You can see that we built a trellis, basically took some VGA cord, pulled it taut through here, and basically gives it something to climb on. Once we get an idea of how these produce, we may continue to extend this out and try to get some more production out of these grapes. Last year we planted cantaloupe and watermelon in this area. But this year I'm going to do something a little bit different. We had some spare wood from the work that we did on our porch over here. And so rather than destroying that stuff and burning it, we decided to just use it as a planter. So I'm going to be planting lettuce, probably some broccoli and cabbage in here as well. I have here's a beautiful lemon tree. It was a gift from a family member this past Christmas. And when we introduced this one, it was not nearly as healthy as it is, but really looking forward to what happens here. So stay tuned. We'll look at the development of this tree and see what kind of fruit we can get off of it. We lived in the tropics for a while. One of the things that always fascinated me was trying to grow things that were not native to the area where we were living. So when we lived over in Ghana, one of the things that we did is we tried growing crops that you would have in the States, like broccoli or cabbage, which were a little bit more difficult to grow there, even strawberries, which were not typically grown in that part of the world. Well, now that we're back in the States, we've kind of reversed that, and we want to try to grow some things that typically you wouldn't grow in an area like Maryland. You'd be growing them in the tropics, and one of those things is pineapples. You know, growing pineapples, at least getting the plant started, is not all that difficult. When you go to the store, you pull out one of those pineapples, and when you cut the end off, what you have is a potential new plant. So what I did is I cut off the head of those, and I want to show you kind of how these develop. As you can see, this one we've planted, and it's beginning to develop a root system. Now, this is not a healthy plant. We left it out in the cold a little bit too long. But these right here are very healthy, and once we get back into our warmer months, we're going to introduce these to the outside and let them get sun like normal and just let them grow in these pots. You might say, well, could these actually produce a fruit? And the answer is, of course they can, but it's going to take time. The life cycle for pineapple is about 2 years, and so what we're going to do is, as these plants mature, we'll give you little updates and keep them connected so that you can see what we hopefully will get is a fruit maybe a year or two from now.